Hur hamnade vi här?
Vi skulle ju bara filmatisera en bok.
Among ethnic stereotypes in the USA, there is one about Chinese being smart, and one about Swedes being dense. Chinese immigrants in the USA during the 19th century were subjected to discriminatory legislation. Swedish immigrants were hired as maids.
We come from Sweden. I am strong and healthy. I can do farm work.
I can dish, wash. I can tidy up home, kitchen, bedroom, master.
If we are anything to go by, we may confirm that Swedes indeed are slow on the uptake, and that China seems to act with lightning speed on everything except privacy. But will that remain so forever? Could people from Sweden precipitate an existential risk for the political leadership of China? An existential risk is a risk of going extinct. Is there any way such a thing might occur? It would have to involve the development of some instrument of power capable of conferring as much decisive strategic advantage as the first nuclear weapons did for the USA in the 1940s, and that Swedes would be somehow involved. Impossible?
I am Abbe.
And I am Britta. We are two Swedish administrators who had very little insight into high-tech. But then we started wondering how accelerating technological development is going to impact on society. So we decided to make some videos inspired by this book.
Which is authored by another Swede, one who is a futures scenarios analyst.
We chose to do this because of our commitment to the ARC Mission Foundation, which seeks to preserve and disseminate humanity's most important information across time and space. The three of us may not be direct descendants of the first inhabitants of the region which is now Sweden. A few millennia ago, the Proto-Indo-Europeans came to Stone Age Europe with a strategic advantage in the form of horses, wagons and metal tools. In the early 15th century, Ming Dynasty China had a strategic advantage in the form of firearms and ocean-going ships. But it also had a conservative bureaucracy, which seems to be what saved Spain and England from second place in the race to become an existential catastrophe for all peoples in the Western Hemisphere and beyond. Sweden only managed to be a catastrophe for its neighboring countries like Germany. In Germany there is the expression "behind Swedish curtains," which means to be in prison. In 1945, the USA had a decisive strategic advantage, which in principle could have been used to assert complete political dominance over the world. In our history, this did not happen, but in a thought experiment where Germany had been first to develop nuclear weapons, it may seem more plausible that it would have established what the Swedish futurist Nick Bostrom calls a singleton government. The term refers to the hypothetical situation where a single geopolitical actor takes over an entire world. Is that possibility exclusively imaginary? Elon Musk is a person who has expressed concerns that artificial intelligence is going to become more dangerous than nukes. Elon Musk is often perceived to be so eccentric that he isn't taken quite seriously. But if we look into who frightened Elon, Nick Bostrom from Sweden features prominently. Bostrom is a professor at Oxford University, where he has built up a research institute named Future of Humanity Institute, FHI. Another Swede, Max Tegmark, has followed in Nick Bostrom's footsteps, but went further west to another star in the heavens of academia, MIT in the USA. Max started as a cosmologist and then continued from there and founded another future studies institute, the Future of Life Institute, FLI. Both the FHI and the FLI analyze scenarios for catastrophic risks like climate crisis, world war and other unpleasantries, and not least implications of the technological singularity. Speculations regarding the so-called technological singularity include scenarios where artificial intelligence recursively self-improves from today's specialized algorithms into a superintelligence of godlike potency in a very short amount of time, perhaps as little as a few minutes. That combination of super smart and super fast sounds like something which only happens in the movies. But in the USA there is an AI safety expert named Eliezer Yudkowsky who does not rule out the possibility that it could be programmed by hackers to happen in the cloud any day. Perhaps it would take hackers as competent as the fictional Swedish thriller character Lisbeth Salander. Super competent characters are common in fiction. Isaac Asimov's superintelligent computer Multivac is one example, and another is the more whimsical Deep Thought invented by Douglas Adams. Yudkowsky, too, is the founder of a research institute. It is named MIRI for Machine Intelligence Research Institute. Boström and Tegmark have been active in reaching out with Yudkowsky's risk scenarios for the ultimate IT system failure where machines run rampant and perhaps turn planet Earth into paperclips or something similar which resembles supervillain or just plain corporate sociopathy. There are futuristic scenarios which many people would view as pure entertainment, but which Yudkowsky take more seriously. Douglas Adams in Life, the Universe and Everything portrays a species of ultra-warrior creatures called the armor fiends of Striterax, who build a supercomputer named Hector, a tool AI destined to design the ultimate weapon.
Make the ultimate weapon!
Please define the ultimate weapon.
Go to bloody Wikipedia! Excellence is the only passing grade.
From the perspective of the armor fiends, ultimate has the military meaning of superior to that of any enemy. Hector instead dives to the bottom of physics and designs a bomb as small as a cricket ball, but with the capacity to destroy all stars in the universe in one go.
For warfare only. This is not a toy. Will cause catastrophic injury. Store away from potatoes. I love it!
What the risk assessors would rather prefer is to achieve so-called alignment of any superintelligence before it explodes. This is a theme in Boström's book, Superintelligence, and Tegmark's book, Life 3.0. How to achieve such a feat is still mostly guesswork, as is the task of estimating how much intelligence could be run on a given hardware. The laws of physics seem to allow a huge amount of it. The first people who manage to create a superintelligence and also make it do what they wish, then will face an open pod bay door towards a cyberspace ruled by themselves as Big Brother. Tegmark and Boström would in that event prefer an ingredient of more Swedish lagom, a hard to translate Swedish word meaning just right and not too much but not too little either. Then in the novel 1984. Aiming for their institutes to orchestrate the alignment, they promise to take all human values into consideration. This has been summarized in a document called the Asilomar Ai Principles. If anyone wonders, Asilomar is not located in either of the major IT nations, India or China. It is a seaside resort in California. The conference held there was mostly attended by an Anglo-Saxon white male crowd of academics and engineers who were able to agree that artificial intelligence should be developed in accordance with ideals of dignity, freedom, diversity, fairness, transparency, privacy, prosperity, and safety. Donald Trump remained in the White House and said that AI should be aligned with American values. If previous instances when one group of people have held power over many others are anything to go by, one may safely assume that it is their own opinions which will be the guiding star, whoever gets that strategic advantage. Or would individualist humanists from North America and North Europe really want to give a proportional vote to Indian Hindu nationalists, Chinese communists or Iranian theocrats? Oh, and maybe more puzzling, where do the world's huge differences in cultural attitudes come from, if human beings indeed are quite similar at heart? The incentive to develop artificial intelligence, of course, is to increase the ability to solve tough problems. The toughest problem ever faced by humankind has to do with values. The reason for this is that human beings are the result of biological evolution. We are therefore motivated both to compete and to cooperate in ways which depend on the way others behave and on the surrounding conditions. Various groupings of people are thus constantly involved in dealing with others and with themselves and with the environment. Group agents like nations, religious organizations and corporations can change their behavior drastically due to pursuit of power and wealth. Individuals who belong to the groups have quite a bit of ability to be molded by peer pressure while continuing to perceive the new agendas as right, correct and true. Many Swedes are curious about cultural attitudes. One of them is B. Puranen, Secretary General of the social science research organization World Values Survey. She has presented this diagram as an illustration. According to Puranen, cultural attitudes move towards the upper right-hand corner as a result of increasing affluence in societies. Group identities such as clans, families, religions and national patriotism become weaker while state institutions, corporations and media are strengthened. No country has gone farther than Sweden in this direction, which is regarded by liberal Swedes as a Swedish model worth following, even though it can be construed by non-Swedes to be very far from lagom. Perhaps the political leaders in India would agree on the bit about affluence, but on the other hand, a majority of Swedes are so perverse that they would gladly eat a dead cow, yet flatly refuse the tiniest sip of the health-bringing urine from a happily living one. Well, with or without bovine liquid gold, people who gain the power to steer others will always lead the way in a fashion they themselves prefer. The one fashion they prefer the most is to remain in power. The anticipated new kid on the block that the old kings of the hill are eager to have in their power is that artificial superintelligence which they want to do all that work for them. Such as, in one scenario, rejuvenating the Chinese political leadership. In a gentle Swedish lagom sort of way. The old politicians in China all get to stay in their own cozy country cottages staffed with helpfully attentive gatekeepers. But is all this ever going to become technically feasible? What if engineers aren't brilliant enough to bring up the intelligence of computers to human level and beyond? Nobody can be certain. However, it is certain that human beings can do far more advanced work when coordinated in groups than in isolation. If it were possible to skip our slow communication through language and instead directly link human brains together, might not then mental connection proceed 100 times faster? An engineering challenge to be sure, but one that essentially boils down to building high enough fidelity and resolution into decoders and encoders of brainwave patterns. Networked humans can then manage to design smarter computer hardware and software, and those upgraded computer systems would join in the network to make it competent enough to build even smarter computers, and so on in recursive self-improvement. So, then what?